Sudhanshu, please go ahead.
So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar today. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Sudhanshu, and I lead the operations and the business department for SISA Institute in India, and I look out for the overseas region as well. And so today, the main topic that we will be covering up is the scoping and segmentation on cloud, which is in relation to PCI DSS. And with this, we'll gain insights into the best practices and practical strategies for effectively implementing PCI DSS requirement within the cloud uh, so cloud based system itself. So we have Manoj Sharma, who is our master trainer, who will lead this webinar and give you all the insights. And as Manoj informed, if we have any more queries, we can write it out on the chat, and we will discuss in the end. So this webinar will be for 60 minutes, and we will extend the webinar for 15-20 minutes more for the Q&A session in the end. Right. So yeah, Manoj, we can start now. Hello.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining this particular webinar. This webinar is very different from the regular webinars which we do because today we are going to talk about cloud. And in this particular era of technology, I don't think there is any company which is not having their infrastructure hosted on cloud, or maybe using a particular subscription which may be as simple as a software as a service. So we thought of, okay, let's do this particular webinar to understand, from a cloud security perspective, how you can actually set up the right scoping for your infrastructure. So the webinar objective is to understand PCI DSS scoping requirement from cloud workloads perspective to ensure that all the resources, either if they are storing, processing, or transmitting cardholder data, you are able to identify them well, you are able to inventory them well, and based on that, you are able to implement the right level of controls required for PCI DSS compliance there. So that's the objective for this particular workshop. Let's get ahead. This workshop is going to be for 60 minutes, and based on the count of questions, we may extend it maybe for another 10 to 15 minutes if required. All attendees will be in the listening mode, and if you have any kind of questions, feel free to put it on the chat window. We have a chat window open for everyone, and you can put in their questions there. Webinar agenda. Today, we are going to start with a little bit of introduction to cloud. Even though I am not going to the level of, making you understand all that, service model, deployment model, all of that. I think you guys are fairly into this, and we all know this kind of stuff. So we will try to discuss some kind of advanced stuff here. Then we will be hopping on PCI DSS on cloud. Is it easier or harder? Different people may have their own perspective, and I would like to know that. Then data specific and scoping requirement. What kind of scoping requirement you have, and how you are going to identify the data. Understand PCI DSS scoping as a whole, and then steps into good practices which you should follow while performing scoping on the cloud. And same with segmentation as well. I'm going to provide you a decision tree on top of it. And then we will also talk about few cloud native features or services which every security professional should use so that they are able to automate some part of their PCI DSS compliance thing and make life easy for everyone. And finally, I'm going to help you with understanding how my team here at SISA can help you to in your journey to compliance, or it may be even a professional journey. If you are looking for learning more things, we are here to help. Here is a bit of introduction about myself. My name is Manoj Sharma. I have overall around like 25 years of experience. Out of that, 5+ years in payment security and 19+ years in cyber security. I am a military veteran, and as you can see on your screen, I have few certifications also with me. I do also train for CISSP as well. So I have trained more than 2,500 people on CISSP, and that's what about me. So let's get into this. All right. So I would like to ask from you, what is your individual perception on this particular question? PCI DSS compliance on ground, is it easier or harder compared to on-prem? So I would like to give you guys 30 seconds window so that you all can plug in your answers in the chat. I want to see how the cloud is how the crowd is thinking about this particular topic. I see some inputs coming from the chat. Please plug in. You can either call it as easier or harder. It's okay. I hope you are able to see the screen. Sudhanshu, can you check? Are you guys able to hear me loud and clear? And my
Yes, Manoj, we can see you and we can
I
see your
see some
screen.
chats inflowing now. Okay, I think chat is disabled. Maybe if you can enable that, that will be great. But yes, for now, let's take it forward. It's okay if it isn't working. I know you guys may think, some of you may think this is easier. Some of you may think it is harder. So let me give you my perspective, and we'll try to analyze that. So let's talk about the difficulties on the cloud. Let's talk about the challenges on the cloud. So there are specific challenges on the cloud when it comes to visibility and control, because the hard drive on which your cardholder data is placed is not under your control, and sometimes it can be a challenge. Then there can be, inadequate data segmentation as well, which can lead to data breaches at the same time. You never know what is the physical level of controls which are implemented by the cloud service provider. And there are chances of data loss and unavailability if there is some kind of snag happening on the cloud service provider end. And then lack of appropriate due diligence when you are actually onboarding a particular cloud service provider, and that's kind of very, very important. We will talk about that, why it is so. And then misunderstanding, shared responsibility. I see this problem very, very prevalent across the industry, that many of the cloud customers, they are not able to understand the shared responsibility model. So we are going to talk about that as well, a little bit more in detail. And then data resiliency and residency and legal compliance can be a big challenge with data sovereignty in place and data localization kind of things there. Every country has come up with their own regulations, and sometimes it can be a daunting task for any organization, right? So these are kind of very, very common high level challenges somebody faces when the infrastructure is going to be hosted on cloud, right? But at the same time, what I want to update you guys, right? If you understand the cloud services better, if you understand the shared responsibilities better, there can be a very, very smooth journey, and you are going to enjoy that ride onto a big cloud service provider. As you can see in your picture, it is very much an analogy of the cloud service provider.
Manoj, sorry to interrupt you. Can you make it to PPT mode? Actually, the screen is it's not in the PPT mode, so participants are not able to see it properly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now it's great. Good. Perfect.
Now is it full slide coming to you guys?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. So end of the day, the bottom line here is, yes, there are challenges on cloud when you are actually hosting your critical data in the cloud. But at the same time, if you are understanding the cloud services, if you are able to understand the shared responsibilities better, it is going to make your life very, very smooth. And PCI DSS compliance can be a, it can become very easy for you, and even to a level where it can be automated to some extent, right? So those are the kind of stuff. With that said, I know few of you may have, based on your experience, some kind of objections to this. How can this be so easier? So in the entire coming slides, we are going to talk about how this is going to happen. But before that, we will take a back step here. I know this audience is an advanced audience, but might be there are few of you who are not so familiar with PCI DSS. They are into cybersecurity, but not into payment security. So I will take a step back and I would explain you what is PCI DSS. So PCI DSS basically stand for Data Security Standard, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. It is basically a baseline of technical and operational controls which are specified in the framework, which is hosted by Payment Card Industry Security Standard Council, right? And this particular standard is evolving over a period of time. We started back in 2004 with version 1.0, and today we stand on version 4.0. There is a lot of changes in this particular framework which is upcoming. However, what is that one thing which everybody must know, right? First and foremost, every entity or any entity who is storing, processing, or transmitting cardholder data must be compliant with PCI DSS, right? Second thing, okay, to remain compliant, what is that we are going to protect? So what we are going to protect is the account data, right? The data which is there on your card, or the data which is related to that particular card, maybe your PIN or maybe your CVV2. And that particular data, the entire card data and the secret data, can be divided into two categories, as you can see. One is called as cardholder data, and another one is called as sensitive authentication data. Sensitive authentication data includes any kind of PIN, CVV2, or track data which is there on the card, which is there in your small magnetic stripe, which is there at the on the card, right? So all of these data need to be protected, and during a particular transaction, there are multiple entities who will be handling this data. To make sure that there is no weak links, we need to make sure that all the entities, they are all on the same security baseline. And to do that, PCI DSS is here to help the organization to set up that particular baseline. As per version 4.0, as you can see, there are very, very specific requirement when it comes to the scoping part, because scoping can be a make or break for your PCI journey. If you're not able to scope your data better, if you're not able to scope your systems components better, it is going to be a challenge forever. To make sure that you are doing the right level of scoping, there is requirement number 12.5.2 in the framework which has been mentioned, and every organization, they need to make sure that they are confirming their scoping in a formal manner after every 12 months. You have to identify all the locations. You need to have all the data flows from where the cardholder data flows in your organization. You also have to identify all the in-scope systems, including any kind of segmentation controls as well. Even to the extent, if there is a third-party integration with your environment, let's say there is an API integration from a third party to your environment, that also need to be captured. And you should be having a complete inventory of all the third parties who are there in the scope. And moreover, these requirements are for merchants. What if you are a service provider? You need to formally perform a PCI DSS scoping every 6 months. And it is not only periodic, it is also on any kind of significant changes. And that is a very, subjective term. When say significant changes, means every now and then there is something or the other happening in the company which is kind of significant. So you cannot just say that you are going to perform your scoping after every 6 months. You may have to do it earlier as well, as and when there is a major change in the infrastructure, in the applications, in the environment. Then you have to perform the scoping again. It can be a challenging task for the companies, for sure, because performing an scoping is not that simple. I would recommend that we should also have some kind of automated mechanism to find out what are the changes happening in the infrastructure altogether. And we can see if that is, that is going for some level of approval. And based on that, we can identify if this is a small change or a big change, right? Now that we understand the requirement on the scoping perspective, and today we are going to talk about what if you are on cloud, how you are going to meet these requirements if you are on cloud, right? So basically, scoping, those who are very new to the subject, scoping is the process of identifying the people, process, and technologies that interact with the cardholder data. Now, it can be people as well, it can be process as well, and it can be technology as well. Today, in this particular webinar, we are going to touch upon more on the technology aspect of it. We are not going to talk about process and the people out there, because otherwise the webinar will be very, very huge. So it is important for organizations to properly scope their PCI DSS environment to ensure compliance is there. There is, best utilization of the, funds, what you have in security. And at the same time, it also reduces a lot of time and effort for the team, right? So with that perspective, let's get ahead. What you see on your screen is, if you understand, if this particular person who is standing, if you think it as if this is my system, or this is my application or network, which is processing the cardholder data, you also see some blue line around the same person. Those are the kind of supporting services which are helping this particular system or these set of systems to actually process the information or to keep them secure. And then whatever you see the rest of the area which is there in black, right, that is something out of scope, right? So on a very high level, in a very layman's language, this is what it is for those who are very new to the concept. But let's talk it more from a technical perspective, and I have some kind of criteria set for this. So in this entire PCI DSS cardholder data environment, there are two categories which are coming: category 1 and category 2. Category 1 are the devices or the network or the systems or the application which is directly either storing or processing or transmitting cardholder data, right? On the other end, CAT2 services are the kind of services or system components which are either have connectivity with cardholder data environment, or they are supporting it from a security perspective, or they can impact the security of the CAT1 devices. And that is the reason why anything in CAT1 and CAT2 both falls under the category of cardholder data environment. This is the inventory of the systems which you need to maintain, you need to keep updated, and based on the PCI DSS requirement, you need to implement the controls out there for this entire CAT1 and CAT2, right? If you do not do scoping, then the entire environment can be in the scope of PCI DSS, and that can be a big issue for the company in the manner that you need to invest more in terms of security. You need to have more processes around this. You need to have a bigger workforce, and even after that as well, you may fail in compliance because the scoping is not right. So you need to, end of the day, identify what are the CAT1 and CAT2 systems for me and what is CAT3. And CAT3 is nothing but those systems which are either not storing, processing, or transmitting cardholder data, as well as they are not connected with the cardholder data environment, as well as they cannot impact the security of the cardholder data environment. If any system which meets all these three requirements, right, 3 or 4 requirements, right, they can easily be called out as out of scope, right? Now these things we understand from a infrastructure perspective, from a on-prem perspective. But you might even be thinking right now, how does this entire thing will happen on cloud? What if we are on cloud, right? So let's talk about how do we perform scoping in cloud environments. First and foremost, we need to make sure that we engage with a PCI compliant cloud service provider. That's the first thing which any organization should do when they need to get compliant with PCI DSS. Because if there is, if you hired a cloud service provider, you have onboarded them, and later on you came to know their particular service is not compliant with PCI DSS, you are at risk. The cloud service provider is not at risk, right? So that's very important to understand. Then how you're going to make sure that the cloud service provider is compliant with PCI DSS? Normally, you will see that the cloud service provider, they provide us a artifact page or a compliance page, and that is where they put a tag that we are PCI DSS compliant. Is that enough? No. What you need to do during the due diligence process is you need to ask for attestation of compliance. So attestation of compliance is the management documentation. It's a legally enforced documentation which states that the company is compliant with PCI DSS and we are committed to remain compliant with PCI DSS, right? So you are going to go back to your cloud service provider and asking them for this AOC, right? Right, I asked for this and I see that a particular cloud service provider has given me a AOC and there is a certain set of services which are listed and my entire scope of work is falling under those services. That's great news. But at the same time, just using a particular you can say PCI DSS compliant service does not mean that you are going to get compliant with PCI DSS. For example, right, in AWS, we have S3 bucket, right, for data storage and other things, right? Yes, that service is PCI DSS compliant, but you will only be compliant when you will enable encryption on that, right? So there is some responsibility which lies on the cloud customer as well. The services are not by default compliant with PCI DSS. You need to configure it in such a way. Another example you can see on the screen, right? It is related to AWS key management service. So key management service is very much a PCI DSS compliant service, but at the same time, how you are managing your key, what is the rotation period of your key, to whom you are sharing with the keys, that all is the responsibility of the cloud customer. So the bottom line here is, even if a cloud service provider is compliant with PCI DSS and the listed services what you use is also PCI DSS compliant, then also it does not guarantee that you are always going to be compliant unless you make sure that you configure it well. Now let's understand the shared responsibility model, because this is where most of the accountability goes for a toss. And you can see on the screen, the left hand side, there are certain responsibilities which are there for the consumer. That means for the cloud customer, and there are certain services for the provider, cloud service provider, right? You can see a line in between, and that is little thick, right? That means there is a level of segmentation or you can say abstraction between these two layers. You have to understand it well. Some services may be completely in the responsibility of the cloud service provider, but some services may be consumer responsibility as well. There might be some shared controls as well. For example, patch management. Now, patch management, if you are going for infrastructure as a service, right? the patch management or the firmware management of the hardware lies as a responsibility of the cloud customer. But as a consumer, you have to update your operating system. Same goes with configuration management as well, right? The underlying infrastructure need to be configured well, and cloud service provider, they manage this. But at the same time, what about the configuration which is there on the top of the stack? That is where cloud customer has to do the thing, right? Awareness, cloud service providers may train their employees onto all these kind of things, and you have to train your employees on the same of the things, right? So you can see on the right hand side, there are specific responsibilities for the customer content and for AWS services as well. For example, all availability zone, reasons, edge location, compute, all of that lies under the responsibility of the cloud service provider, whereas all your client-side data encryption, server-side data encryption, your content, your access controls, all that, falls under your category. So it is very important to understand the entire shared responsibility model in a very, very clear way whenever we are going to cloud. Now here, this is a decision-making tree. I would prefer you guys can take a screenshot of the same, right? That is going to give you some kind of insight on how do we progress around it. So let's say you already have a cloud infrastructure hosted for you, and you have some payment services which are hosted on you, maybe an e-commerce website also. The first step is to identify account data ingestion points from where you are ingesting this particular data. Is it through a on-prem POS machine, or is it from a cloud service, some kind of application, or maybe e-commerce portal? List down all those particular things and then identify the cardholder data flow. When I say the cardholder data flow, it is across the data lifecycle. That means from where the data is getting collected, where it is getting stored, where it is being used, where it is getting processed, where it is getting retained and destructed. So think from all the perspective and include all of those assets, all of those cloud assets which comes under this particular category. And then identify cloud resources in the flow. What all resources are falling? There might be some services which are abstracted services, which means that they are purely managed by the cloud service provider, and there is a complete level of abstraction between that, which means that if you are hosting a virtual machine, and on top of that virtual machine you have hosted some card data, right? And there is a level of abstraction between that virtual machine and the underlying server, right? So you need to identify all those kind of abstracted services there, and based on that you need to, because as and when it is all managed services, for example AWS Lambda or maybe Google functions, right? All of those serverless and other functions, right? You can only control the data flow there by implementing certain kind of data flow controls. So that is on one side. On the other side, if you are hosting infrastructure, let's say you are hosting virtual machines and all of that, right? Then you need to identify infrastructure cardholder data environment instances which are running on the cloud, identified which all systems are connected to these systems which are processing, storing, or transmitting cardholder data. Also, identify what all other systems can impact the security of this cardholder data environment, right? It can be a very simple API configuration with with a system which is outside. But if that particular system is compromised, then the attacker can do a lateral movement and come and hit your cardholder data environment. That is why this is one of the criteria there, right? And then based on that, you are going to define segmentation controls through your account separation and security groups, and bringing in some kind of virtual devices like firewall and all of that. So I think this is a decision tree what you should follow whenever you are going on cloud. Let's talk about account level segmentation. So you can perform segmentation on cloud on 3 levels. One is on the account level. When I say account level, it is not the user ID and password level. It is basically an organizational level. Okay. For example, you are a customer, you have a particular account with them, right? So on an account level, how we are going to segregate. So that is one way of doing it. Another one can be on the network front, wherein OSI layer 3 and 4 comes into place. And then the third one is on the application layer. So let's talk it from a level segmentation perspective. This is how the cloud, any kind of cloud, let it be Google Cloud, Azure Cloud, or AWS Cloud, they perform, right? They basically perform on an account level. For example, all security services can be grouped under one account. All shared services can be grouped under another account. And then if you need to monitor your environment, all the logging and monitoring kind of services which are there, they can be on another cloud. And like this, you're also hosting your own cardholder data environment. What I would suggest is, whenever you're going for cloud and you want to host your cardholder data environment, have a separate account for your cardholder data environment, which will make sure there is no kind of within your data and your services and systems, you don't need to do additional level of segmentation, because these clouds, these accounts by itself are segmented by design. So that will help to save some money from that perspective. Okay. And any system which is not under cardholder data environment can be under the out of scope account. So that is one of the key concept which we need to understand when we are going on cloud. The another level of segmentation can happen on network level as well. Different cloud service providers call it differently. In AWS, we call it as network segmentation. In Azure, we call it as subscription-based segmentation and all of that. Okay. What you should be really sure is, are you really sure on your network diagrams? Are all your network diagrams updated, right? Do you understand where the segmentation layer has to come, right? That's very important. Second point is, we need to configure virtual, private computing. That is very much important, because in this, the benefit of doing this is that you have a very, isolated kind of environment, your isolated cardholder data environment from the rest of the environment. So you can do it better, you can implement security better out there. Then implement defense strategy by leveraging host-based segmentation. So this is how it happens, right? On cloud, there is no physical components, everything is virtual. And then we use network support groups and virtual firewalls and all of that. Even if they are all used, we always recommend implementing the defense in depth model, and that will come when you will also have endpoint security controls on the endpoint as well. For example, it can be a firewall. In Linux, if you have a Linux-based system, it can be IP, IP tables. If it is Windows, then it can be your firewall. That has also to be enabled. Then implement network virtual appliances. You can install virtual firewall, IDS, IPS, load balancer, all of those kind of stuff to make sure that there is appropriate level of segmentation out there. On top of it, you need to make sure your configuration in top notch, and you need to implement network support group and network-based access control list, which will make sure that the data is not mingling up anywhere. And then on top of it, you need to perform a regular testing out there, right? As you can see on the screen, right, I have given a demonstration of AWS account 1 and account 2, how we are going to keep them segregated. And if you have a infrastructure wherein you have multiple offices or multiple instances running, you want to connect them, you can use it through VPC peering model, right? One good part about this VPC peering is, for example, in this particular case, there is a third account as well. And that third account is communicating with account 2, right? AWS account 2. Then there is no transitive thing which is going to happen. That means it is not going to touch with AWS account 1. If AWS account 1 is your cardholder data environment, then that account 3 will not come into picture because you are touching account 2. So that is called as VPC, peering, which is kind of a great feature by cloud service providers. Same thing also stand with Microsoft and Azure as well. Maybe only the name may change, but the concept is the same. Then application level segmentation is another very, very important feature, because now here we are not talking about layer 3 and layer 4. We are talking about layer 7, right? So this is where the application, they need to communicate with other applications. And how does it happen? It happens through API, application programming interface, right? And in cloud, most of the communication happens through API. Now, if those APIs are not managed better, there is a chance of data mingling up and you losing up on your compliance. So that is where it is preferable to use API gateway and use services like AWS config and all to config them better, to have a quick view on how much we are compliant with this or not. And based on that, we can use API gateways and we can segregate them better, so that not everything is in the scope of PCI DSS. As you can see here, right, in the image, right, we have AWS Lambda and AWS RDS. This is something which is processing the cardholder data, while rest of the environment is also touching your API gateway, but they are out of scope, right? So that can happen if you are doing the better configuration on your APIs. This can help you minimize the scope. Now, there might be a scenario wherein you have a hybrid approach. You have a hybrid environment. And there are 3 use cases which emerge out of it. The first one is that something is hosted on maybe on cloud, and you have some resources on-prem which are actually touching your cardholder data, right? Then scenario 2 is where PCI resources are hosted on-premise and data center network connection to a resource on AWS, which means that you are accessing the cardholder data environment from the cloud. And the third one is PCI resources hosted both in an on-prem and on cloud, both the cases, right? In all these 3 scenarios, right, there is nothing difference. The same principle what we follow on-prem as well, the same will be implemented here as well, okay? If the known CDE resources has a direct connection to cardholder data environment resources, then those things are under the scope of PCI DSS. Okay, but the another good factor here is if the known cardholder data environment resources, that means your out of scope resources, if they have a connection to the connected to systems, that means your CAT2, then those on-prem or AWS resources can be considered out of scope. Because we understood in our last slide as well, there is something called as peering, and in peering there is nothing like transitive. So that way we can reduce our scope. So in all these 3 cases, yes, this is the way to go when it comes to segmentation. On top of it, you can actually also leverage a lot of cloud native features which are available on cloud, and they are anyways not available on prem, right? I wish they should have been, but there's a lot of native features which are available on cloud, which can make your life so much easy when you are trying to get compliant with PCI DSS. First of them is, for example, AWS Security Hub, right? Very, very, pinpointed tool for you to track your compliance and, even try to automate those things as well, right? So that's a wonderful tool you can use. Similar thing also exists for Azure Blueprint as well. You can just enable the blueprint for PCI DSS and the system will keep you informed. It can also give you a lot of recommendations also, what you need to do and all of that. Similarly, you have another service called as AWS config, which can be used to have a quick view on, okay, I have an infrastructure and I have some configuration done, how well the configuration is there, how much the configuration is placed. For all that kind of stuff, you can definitely go to AWS config. It can give you a lot of insights altogether. One of the major challenge companies face is how do I identify the cardholder data? That's always a challenge. It might be in text files, it might be in images and all of that. So for that as well, we have AWS Recognition and AWS Comprehend, which can help you do that. It can automatically scan those devices or maybe those particular data points, and it can help you classify them. And even then you can also make a strategy to aggregate the data so that you are able to aggregate everything in one place and reduce your compliance thing. So those are the kind of features, not just limited to that. It is just few examples I have placed on this. All features are great in cloud. You can definitely understand them better and understand how we can plug in those kind of features into your compliance, right? So that's going to be the key whenever you want to get compliant with PCI DSS and do a perfect scoping on cloud. Right? The current challenge is what we see, right? In the industry as of now, because we are moving from version 3.2.1 to version 4.0. There is a specific timeline for that, and that timeline is reaching fast, right? By 31st March 2024, we need to get compliant with, I wouldn't say get compliant with, but at least version 3.2.1 will expire. And by March 31st, 2025, you need to get completely onto version 4.0. There is no look back after that. There are major changes in this particular version of the framework, total 64 changes. Some are mandatory, 51 are evolving requirement as well, but it can be a daunting task for any company, right? How do we meet it? Right, you need to start early. You need to budget sufficient money for that, because obviously this will consume revenue as well. You need to have skilled people with you, and that is the point where you can have the latest and greatest of the technology out there. You can spend a lot in security, but if your workforce is not skilled, that is the biggest setback for any company, right? And on those lines, companies are struggling. So to help you out with the entire thing, SISA is there in the training industry for the last 15 years. We have trained more than 10,500 professionals out there. We have very, very specific courses. All of them are, NC accredited, right? And one of them is CPI-SI training certification, which will a career enabler for you if you're looking for getting into payment security. It's an exciting field, by the way, right? And another thing is, all these, whatever you see on the screen, right, all are CPI-SI and other certifications. They are, they are in conformance with PCI DSS requirements. So that's the greatest thing what we have. Similarly, if you do CPI-SI and you want to further enhance your skills into payment card industry, right, the way to go is CPI-SI Advanced. This is where we talk a lot about, advanced features and all those kind of stuff. Then there is training also for CPI-SI-D, which means developers as per PCI DSS requirement 6.2. So this is where your development team, if they are into, let's say, in the development of bespoke applications, tailor-made application, or customizing the applications, and those applications are in some form either processing or transmitting cardholder data or having a touch with the cardholder data environment, yes, then those developers also need to go for training, and for that is your CPI-SI-D. The last one here is CIDR, and CIDR is as of now not NC accredited. We agree with that, but that is in the process. But again, a great certifications to do if you are looking for expertise in the area of incident detection and response, right? And this perfectly matches to PCI DSS requirement 12.10.4, right? Apart from this, also our team deliver a lot of security awareness training, because that is a mandate from most of the frameworks. And if you want to get compliant with that, if you want to get your workforce ready for the security threat landscape, that's the way to go. And there are different modalities in which these trainings are delivered. So we do deliver training on site as well. That means the trainer come and fly to your location. We also have a 2-day online workshop as well. And then there is something called as hybrid mode as well, wherein you guys are going to get access for 45 days, and every every Thursday I am gonna meet with you guys, and you give all the insights on that. So this is how your hybrid model may look like. Sudhanshu, would you like to take that over from here?
Sure. First of all, thanks a lot, Manoj, for all the information that you have shared with me and the entire team. So yeah, talking about the hybrid model, like Manoj said, this is a combination of the pre-recorded videos and the live session as well, where on every Thursday, from 7 to 8:30 right now, we have kept the time in the evening. For 90 minutes, we'll be having this live training session with Manoj. And the rest of the day, we will be having a predefined, videos, and there is a predefined target of total 15 hours, which we have to cover up, in this 45 days, like Manoj said. And uh, you know we will be providing you with PDF, the materials, course agenda, everything will be there, which you guys can cover up by your own pace. So this is something which is a flexible approach, where we won't be compromising with anything. And this will be a very engaging and interactive session. That's what the major focus is for us. And if a hybrid doesn't works for us, for anyone, then as always we have a 2 days of online training, uh, you know which is spread across 8 hours and 8 hours for both the days, followed up by the certification, right? So yeah, Manoj, can we move on to the next slide?
Yeah.
Next one, Manoj, next slide please. So yeah, talking about the charges, training cost. So first of all, our training cost involves both the training and the certification together, right? And especially for this one, where people, all of you who have registered for this webinar, we have a special offer, where suppose if you are joining by today or by tomorrow, in the next in the next 24 hours, we have 20% of straight away discount on the training cost. And for someone who wants to take some time, understand which kind of modality you want to go with, and after that, if you want to enroll, you can definitely do that, and we'll have 10% of discount on that as well. Correct. So that's what. And my number and my email ID is there, so you all can reach out to me anytime if you want, and I'll be there to help you out and cater whatever queries you have with, right? So yes, anything if you would like to ask, we can then take up the Q&A now, question and answers for all of you.
Right. So we will wait for some questions here. If anybody has some questions related to what we discussed today, we are most happy to support you on that. Please go ahead and ask your questions here. You can put it on the chat, and we can reply to that. Okay, one of the question I have is, will this slide deck be shared with us? I would say slide deck will not be shared, but at the same time, you will be provided access to the recording. You can definitely go back and refer it. We are going to put it on our YouTube channel and share the link with you guys. So all of you are going to get access to that. Any other questions? Feel free, if you are struggling with something on the cloud, and you are facing some challenges on scoping out your infrastructure on the cloud. SISA also has a great tool to do the data identification, classification, and help you get your scoping better. That is called as SISA Radar. So feel free to leave a comment for us, and our team will be connecting back to you. Another very important information is, you can always remain connected. We always remain connected with SISA Institute LinkedIn page. We have a complete community out there. We are sharing a lot of insight onto PCI DSS and other frameworks for you all, and that is where it can be a great benefit to you, right? Then the next is, how much does it take to enroll for the training? Daniel, I would say please note down this number or send us an email on training@sisainfosec.com. It depends from country to country as well, because the training course is different in different countries as well, and we have to get inconsistent with the regulations as well. So feel free to drop a mail. We definitely have very good pricing for all of you, and if you are enrolling today, yes, straight away you get a 20% discount, whatever the rate is, right? So Sudhanshu, you can take it up.
I'll take it forward. So Daniel, you can contact me in this email ID or number. And we have one more question, that do the certification has any expiration? So yes, the certification will be valid for 3 years, if I'm not wrong, Manoj, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And you can maintain this certification throughout. For example, tomorrow version 5.0 comes in with a major change. Then just a refresher course you have to do, and you can get into that club again, right? And that is how we also have a big pool of SMEs who are attached with us, because we have a good community of over 10,500 people, right, who got certified with CPI-SI. And this is an international certification with NC accredited certification. So you guys can get it for sure.
Surely. And my recommendation normally to the people who don't have that much of time, where because this demands around 16 hours for 2 days. And for anyone, suppose if you don't have that much of time to dedicate, or maybe if not possible to take a leave, then we can definitely move out to the hybrid batch.
Yeah,
Because
I think
100
my recommendation, if you ask me as a trainer, right, hybrid batch is going to change the game for you. You are going to get access for entire 45 days, and you get to get everything online as well. And then you are getting additional insight from me as well, because we are talking about a lot of case studies, breach case studies, and all of that. So all that is kind of extra for you guys. So nothing like hybrid, I would say.
Correct.
Okay, so I think I must thank you all for your time. We are here for 1 hour. I think we are closing on time today. Thanks for all the cooperation from all of you. And we will keep bringing such engaging content for you and give you more and more insight into PCI DSS. So do not forget to, register with us every time we send a LinkedIn post. Get connected with our SISA Institute LinkedIn page, because that's the main source where you can get everything at one place, right? With that, thank you, everyone. And we will meet in another 15 days. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.